The sun will grow black, the earth will sink into the sea, the stars will disappear, fire and water will meet, steam will shoot up, flames will play against the sky, the heavens and earth and all the world will be burned, all the gods will be dead.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Ancient Ogre. Ever since we got the Tekken Bloodline reveal trailer for Netflix, I've just been so fascinated with going back and talking about some of the things that happened in Tekken 3. But what I think is the most important, and I'm surprised I haven't done this sooner, is talking about the god of fighting himself, Ogre. The few things that I do know about Ogre: he has this big controversy with Jun Kazama. Did he kill her? Did he banish her and turn her into unknown? How did that whole thing end? But then also you have Ogre going around and fighting other characters, killing other characters. So I just wanted to talk about this character because there really is so much to him. The first thing that I will say before we get into the actual story: one, Ogre has 3 different forms. The most notable is his base form, the Ancient Ogre. But then his next form is True Ogre. That is sort of his next iteration. But then what a lot of people don't know about, and which also isn't canon, is his Monstrous Ogre form. Now, the Monstrous Ogre form isn't canon. I don't think it will be made canon in the Tekken Bloodline, but I think I do have to mention it when just talking about his story. So I will talk about that at the very end, because that comes at the very end. Even though it's not canon, I will still address it because it's something we may see. But starting off with Tekken 3, we'll talk about where it all begins with Ogre. It says, the god of fighting. The legend of Native American says Ogre was the war weapon which creatures from outer space left on Earth in ancient times. It understands the entire structures of all living and artificial beings and absorbs them. It wanders the earth in search of strong souls. The legend from the Native Americans say that he was left on the planet by aliens, but then when Jun Kazama sees him, she flat out calls him a demon. Now, that's kind of interesting there, because we've seen other demons before in Tekken. You have the Devil Gene, which is Jin and Kazuya, their devil forms, but then also another pure demon that we saw is Azel. It's going to be very interesting to see, is he actually an alien or is he a true demon? Because we didn't have that many answers about Azel. So getting to learn more about Ogre, maybe that could give us some answers there. And then also another big mystery I talk a lot about on this channel is, I believe in Tekken 4, there was this red voice that just took over Kazuya and took over Jin. And I just wonder, are all these things connected? I don't know, but let's continue. Ogre is first mentioned in Heihachi Mishima's character profile. It states that many years after Heihachi had reclaimed control of the Mishima Zaibatsu, he forms the Tekken Force, his own military group. One of the missions of the Tekken Force is to covertly search the world for Ogre. The Tekken Force searches ancient temples located somewhere in Mexico. Soon after arriving there, Heihachi learns that his entire force has been obliterated by Ogre. Heihachi, having witnessed the power of Ogre, seeks to capture him in hopes of creating the ultimate life form. I thought Heihachi spawned Ogre. I thought Heihachi unleashed Ogre upon the world as some sort of Mishima Zaibatsu scheme. But he really was just looking for this old Native American myth, this old legend. And he went to a temple in Mexico, and I don't know if by him accessing it, him opening it, that awakened the monster inside. We usually see that's how it works, right? Whenever people go to old temples, whether that's Egypt, whether that's the Aztecs, whether that's Mexico, the Mayans, whatever, whenever they go inside these temples, they trigger something or they do something, and that awakens the monster. And that kind of looks like what Heihachi ended up doing here. According to official canon, Ogre attacks many renowned martial arts masters around the world and absorbs their ki and abilities into his own being. So this makes sense. This is why people say Ogre killed Baek-doo-san, because I specifically remember Ogre having Baek-Dusan's some of his moves. Ogre eventually makes his way towards Yakushima, where Jun Kazama lives with her 15-year-old son. Ogre finds them and attacks. The exact results of the battle is unknown, but Jin is knocked out cold and awakened later on to find his home destroyed and Ogre and Jun nowhere to be found. Assuming Ogre has taken Jun's life, Jin swears revenge on them. Now I think this is the perfect time to talk about the picture once again. I talked about it before, but when I was watching Mainman Sui's breakdown of the trailer, he himself said that Ogre killed Jun Kazama, and he was kind of referencing this picture.
You know, in the story of Tekken 3, Jun is killed by Ogre.
Now, I talked about it many times that this is not the case. This picture, the intro to Tekken 3, is what Jin perceives happens, right? He got knocked out, and when he wakes up, maybe he sees some blood, maybe he just see like his house was burnt down. You go from trying to be in the fight, trying to help, you get knocked out, you wake up, your house is burnt down, you maybe see some blood, some destroyed stuff. Like, you're thinking the worst. You're probably like, oh my God, my mom is gone. Like, it's, you know, you're probably losing it. So that Tekken 3 intro is what he perceived happened. It's not necessarily what happens. As bait to lure Ogre into the open, Heihachi announces the King of the Iron Fist Tournament 3, 5 years later. So the part we seen in the trailer where Ogre is fighting, you have a 5-year time span where Ogre is still running around. He is still operating throughout that whole entire 5 years. That is crazy. He could be doing anything in that time span. It says Ogre shows up and is defeated by Paul Phoenix. However, unknown to Paul, Ogre morphed into his true form and the tournament continues. This part here kind of baffles me. Ogre is kind of this, like, he's a demon. And you have to wonder, how can a demon enter into a tournament? Put me in the tournament, I'm going to show up for every match. Maybe he would do that, because that's the thing. Heihachi was doing a whole lot of research about Ogre. And Ogre's plan is to go around the world and absorb fighters' ki. And maybe Heihachi told him, like, I'm going to host a tournament. All of the best fighters around the world is going to be here. If you want to do what you say you want to do, you should also be here. So maybe Ogre would follow along. It really just comes down to how smart Ogre is. Is he kind of like a mindless beast, or does he have common sense? And that's why I was saying in the trailer, he doesn't talk, and I wonder if he does. Because if he does speak, if he does say something, that shows a certain level of intelligence, right? If he doesn't say anything and he's just acting like an animal, you have to wonder, what is he doing for 5 years? But if he's talking, and if he's explaining, and if he's, you know, have intelligence, the story makes a lot more sense then, right? Ogre eventually confronts Jin, and they clash in battle. Jin emerges victorious, and Ogre is defeated and killed. This is pretty much it for Ogre's story so far. There is some non-canon extensions to that. I will get to it in a second, but let's talk about his fighting style. Aside from these characters, Ogre has several moves from other characters from Tekken 2, many of which were cut in Tekken 3, having several attacks as such, but not limited to. I think it would be really, really fascinating if Ogre canonically went around and captured all of these characters' attacks. There is a little bit of shakiness there where you have Kazuya and Kuma being here. Both of these characters were presumed dead at the time. It's however left unclear as to how Ogre would have stolen moves from Kazuya and Kuma, who were canonically dead when he emerged. A possible explanation was that Ogre had taken Mishima fighting style karate attacks from Tekken Force members, while Kuma attacks were more of Ogre's more primal instincts, which are more visible with true Ogre. I think that would be a pretty good workaround, a pretty good explanation, and that also would explain why he's not too powerful. Jin is able to defeat him, because here's the thing, if he was able to get some of Kazuya's ki, that would push his power level literally like to the next level. But the second screenshot here, Baek-Dusan, I kind of was talking about this a second ago, but this is the reason Harang enters the tournament to defeat Ogre. Although Tekken 5 reveals Beck survived, but was comatose for a year. There's some other things listed here, but those are the main ones that really stick out. Let's talk about his personality. I usually don't talk about characters' personalities, but I think Ogre's personality tells us a lot about his intelligence. It says, although Ogre sometimes appears like a wild beast, he's actually a sentient being. Very little information is given on the character's personality or story, but what it does describe says that Ogre understands entire structures of all living and artificial beings and absorbs them. In his first form, Ogre is capable of speech, as seen in his winning animations, but speaks in an unknown ancient language. In Tekken Tag Tournament 2, as True Ogre, it's shown that he has predatory instincts, as seen in his continued cutscene. Now this answers a lot of questions about him. He not only speaks, he understands, but it says here that he is a sentient being. Sentient beings are composed of 5 aggregates: matter, sense, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. By no way is Ogre a animal beast. Now, his true Ogre form, he has a little bit of animal nature, but then in his monstrous form, which is about twice the size as the true Ogre form, in that form, he basically becomes a Elden Ring boss, and you have to watch out because he will hit you with some broken mix-up. At that point, he truly is a different entity. But the thing about the monstrous form, it's not canon. Talking about some of his not canon stories, I'll give a brief summary of The Devil Within. So basically, between 4 and 5, Jin leaves the King of the Iron Fist tournament 4, I believe, and he hears rumors of his mother June being alive, but she's kind of like held captive at G Corporation. So he goes to the lab to try to find his mother, and it turns out to be like this kind of trap. He runs into Ogre. Now, he doesn't know if it's a clone or if it's the actual Ogre somehow survived, because we've seen in multiple different endings now. Dr. Boskanovich was playing around with Ogre's blood, and then Heihachi was also trying to play around with Ogre's blood and unlock the secrets. So maybe Kazuya, in this non-canon ending, maybe he did create a clone. Tekken 4 and 5 is so old now, to add that big portion, I don't know what that would do to the story as a whole, especially when you talk about Jun Kazama. I don't know. Another instance where Ogre shows up is in Tekken Mobile. It says, in both the iOS and Android version of the game, Ogre appears at the end of the game, being summoned by the antagonist and newcomer Revenant. After Kazuya, Nina, and the third player of their choosing defeat him, Ogre wants to join in their side, but they refuse to offer before he and Revenant disappears into the shadow light. And kind of going back to the same Devil Within plot, but with a twist. Instead of Kazuya being the one to revive him, it's Revenant. Now, I don't know if they actually will do that at some point, if they will canonically revive Ogre, but seeing how they're playing around with it so much, they may do so. A lot of our eyes is on Tekken Bloodline because there's so much hype and potential in that story. So many questions will be answered, but also the same for Tekken 8. If they decide to bring back Jun Kazama, literally everything is going to be answered at that point. It's make or break right now. It's like Jun Kazama and Ogre, their character personalities, it's all been so blank, so vague. And we're finally going to get more details, more character personality, and we're going to see their characters fleshed out. And I just hope that it's everything we imagined, because Jun Kazama, she really was a blank slate. Ogre, there's a little bit more to him, but he also was a blank slate. It's going to be very, very unique, but I also think odd seeing those characters fully interact with other characters, right? At the beginning of the trailer, we see Jin and Jun, talking and training. I think it's going to be something we've never seen before. That's it. That's everything we know about Ogre so far. I just can't wait to see what they decide to do. But that was just me breaking down his story and also talking about some of the non-canon additions to it. Ancient Ogre, True Ogre, is in a non-canon form / maybe an altered clone, monstrous Ogre, but that's it. That's everything that I want to talk about. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.